Damn, James, we're weighing Donovan Mitchell versus De'Aaron Fox here, with looking at Quinn Snyder's future probably in question a little bit with the Utah Jazz. Based on that Adrian Wojnarowski report, we wondered what was next. Of course, adding Donovan Mitchell would be fantastic, but a De'Aaron Donovan swap question came up, and we started weighing the merits of Donovan versus De'Aaron, and we kind of landed on, yeah, we recognize Donovan's better. He certainly had, bigger moments than De'Aaron has, but it's not as lopsided as some people might think.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to be consistent, and I think that's the one area that Fox probably needs to show that he can be as consistent as Mitchell. Mitchell's also, whether he's a better 3-point shooter, but he also shoots a ton of threes,
Yeah,
which in the modern NBA just really does help a lot.
twice
Coming
as
in,
many as De'Aaron.
yeah, coming into the draft, he was also known as like one of the better defenders. I don't think that that's what we saw in their playoff series this year. I thought he was not good at all defensively, which was a surprise because he always sort of, that was his calling card coming into the league. No one expected him to be the scorer that he is. But overall, I don't know. I mean, they're different, but you couldn't really have both of them on the same team. I don't think. I mean, I like that would be kind of pie in the sky, like a big three scenario that, I mean, clearly the Kings should, if they could ever get their hands on Donovan Mitchell, they should consider. But, that's a tough one. He really does have a high usage rate. It's over 30. It's probably higher than Fox's. His assist rate is lower. It's tough. That would be a tough look. But I'll tell you this, they are friends. And if you wanted two young guards to try to work it out and be great together, having a guy like Sabonis who is selfless and willing to set those guys up and create for them probably would be a good way to do it, as opposed to having a guy like Gobert who's more of a pick and roll specialist. And so I think it would probably work better in Sacramento than it would be if, like, you shipped De'Aaron Fox to Utah.
Hey James, where do you stand on like the fit for players, right? Now I'll explain what I mean. Obviously, we had, a discussion yesterday about Julius Randle and, some possible trade for him. And we got a lot of responses, and we appreciate all the responses, by the way, good and bad, mostly bad, but we love them nonetheless. About you can't do that because Randall doesn't fit and he doesn't spread the floor and he's a back to the back. Like, it'd be ridiculous. People with the fit. You talk about Jaden Ivey and, people are worried about that fit. You just mentioned Donovan Mitchell and De'Aaron Fox. People worried about that fit. I look at it a lot of the times as I try to focus more so on what these players can do. Like, if you have a talented player, focus on what he can do. And then it's up to the coach to, if it's not just a seamless, just roll the balls out and they fit perfectly, it's up to the coach to figure out how to maximize the positives in each of these players' games and make them work together. Like, maybe there's certain situations where they're just never going to work. Like, I understand that. But let's just use Randall and Sabonis for, they both play down low, it'll never work. Well, Mike Brown, that's why you get paid $2, $3, $4 million. Like, I got talent here. Figure out how to make these guys work. Is that too simplistic, or is that fair?
I think it has to be in the right situation. So fit to me is crucial. If you can get the right fit of players, but I think what you run into is, again, in the Randall situation, I think Randall is a tough fit because he likes a ball in his hands. He is a ball dominant big that, he can pass, he can do a lot of things. He's not a great shooter. He's had moments where he's been a really good shooter, but it's really not sustained. So it's kind of tough to fit him in because what he wants to do is kind of do what Fox does, but you also have Fox and Sabonis. So when it comes to Mitchell, I think, yeah, like, look, the Kings need a player who shoots 9.3 3-pointers a game or whatever it is that Mitchell shoots. They clearly need that. So I think that there's a way that you could fit two guys if they're willing to sacrifice for each other. And the way I look at it is, if you go to the Boston Celtics and you look at their two best players, Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, they don't naturally fit together. And there are times where they don't look good together at all. And I know that they take a lot of time where one of them is always on the court. And that's not just because one of them needs to be on the court to keep you in the game. It's because one of them needs to be on the court because they need to get theirs. And so we see them rotate in and out of the game where they're not always playing together. So I think there are ways you can do this, right? But it's got to be the right deal. It's got to be the right idea that you then give time to mature and grow. And that's something that the Kings don't usually do. They are not usually patient enough. I mean, if you told me that there's no way that Tyrese Halliburton and De'Aaron Fox could play together, I'll still tell you that's crazy. Like, does Fox look better without Halliburton? Yes. Does Halliburton put up bigger numbers without Fox? Yes. Well, but that was in like year 1.5 because they didn't have a true full season to work with each other. They really hadn't played that much together. Sometimes you got to let these things grow organically and mature organically and let them figure out how to make each other better. And again, to use Halliburton as sort of a jumping off point, like his PER was like below 20. I mean, not his PER, his usage rate was below 20. Mm-hmm. And him and Fox couldn't like coexist when his usage rate was that low. So at a certain point, number one, Fox has to show that he can play with other players, right? Mm-hmm. He's got to show the ability to make other players better. Or B, like you need to, if you're still not winning and that's the way it goes, then you got to find a way to try something different because, you know, he has to, if he's going to be the lead guy, he has to make his teammates better and he has to actually win games. And those are two things that as of right now, he hasn't done a lot of. And I don't blame him for not making all of his teammates better. You know, that doesn't always happen like right away, especially when you have so many different teammates and so many changes and so many different head coaches. But at some point, you know, Fox has to show that ability where Mitchell has shown the ability to make a lot of people better. And that's why they've, you know, had tremendous success in the playoffs. Well, in the regular season, moderate success in the playoffs, and sometimes they flame out. But yeah, like I'm open to a lot of things, but it can't just be a non-starter. And for me, like the one guy that I look around the league is probably a non-starter is Randall, just because of the way he fits.
And real quick,
burner accounts. He was replying to us yesterday.
He absolutely was. The thing that James just said, though, that I agree with, that's a great observation by him, is I think fit, as we talk through this, is more than just X's and O's. Like you can have players that skill set maybe don't fit together, but if you have individuals that are committed to winning, that are committed to doing what needs to be done to win, sacrifice, you know, maybe step up their game, change their role or whatever the case may be, you can get guys that play the same position or traditionally have the same skill set. But if they're willing to sacrifice and do what needs to be done for winning, it can work. I just thought that was a great point. The Tatum and Brown thing was a great example of that.
Yeah, and you can look at C.J. McCollum and Damian Lillard as well. Like, you had to give them time. People who think that C.J. McCollum just walked into the league and was good, they haven't gone back and looked at the stats. Like, his first 3 years weren't just, like, spectacular, and he came out as either junior or senior. You know, like, he should have been able to mix that thing up together, like, faster, but it didn't happen. And so sometimes you just have to be patient. And, you know, I think putting, like, fake, you know, these things that the Kings are doing, oh, we have to make the playoffs in year 17. Like, we can't make it go stuff. Like, come on. Like, if the thing is growing the right way, then you stick with it and you have some patience and you let the thing grow organically. And that's where this thing always goes off its rails. It's not just, you know, switching out GMs or switching out head coaches, switching out assistants, it's switching out players nonstop. It's switching out identities nonstop. And so You get a player like Donovan Mitchell, he brings an identity to the team, and he can fill a lot of like the leadership void and all those things that we've talked about. But I also think he can be like an elite running mate with De'Aaron Fox in the right situation.
Let's stick with this theme of like fit, because and we'll get to the podcast that you, Brandon, and Sean did recently about Jaden Ivey potentially creeping in to the top three. I think that's interesting, but it kind of sets the background for this question here, and that if Jaden Ivey has the opportunity to creep into the top three, that means he's probably locking in on, okay, well, he's the guy at 4. He's the 4th best talent available if he doesn't move up. He is the best talent available when the Sacramento Kings draft. And we just spent all of this time talking about fit, and you brought up Tyrese Halliburton and believing that Tyrese Halliburton can play together. How with Jaden Ivey are we not potentially running into another fit situation with Jaden Ivey?
Well, I think this is the scariest one ever, because I do believe that there would be some fit issues, and I think the Kings believe there would be some fit issues. But at the end of the day, if he's the 4th best talent, and I don't even know if that's true. He could be the 2nd best talent in this draft. He could be the 3rd best talent. He could end up being the best player in this draft. I mean, we have all these people who are comparing him to Russell Westbrook all the time because of the way he plays with force, or Donovan Mitchell. Like, if you're the Kings, you can't pass. And if you do, you better be doing something really, really smart to make that happen. Like you figure it out. That's what you do at the end of the day. Jaden Ivey isn't a huge usage player, or at least he hasn't been. But if you look at who he projects as an NBA player, maybe he does project as like the guy, right? The guy like a Russell Westbrook or Donovan Mitchell, where you hand the ball to them and you sort of put your fate in him as a star. But you don't pass on a star at number 4 because you might have something that might work with someone else, especially when that someone else is, again, 20, what is Fox, 24 to go, or he just turned 25. No, maybe he is 24. I'll have to look it up. But, like, you want to make sure that, like, you're not passing on, like, an 8-time All-Star, a future Hall of Famer, because you've got De'Aaron Fox, and you don't think he'll work with De'Aaron Fox. I mean, to be honest, that's how you pass on Luka Doncic. That's not a good way to manage your talent level. If he's the best talent on the board, he needs to go number 4 if he's the one who falls to them. Now, if someone else somehow jumps into the top 3 and pushes Ivy and Banchero, or Ivy and Holmgren, or somehow Ivy moves into the top 4, into the top 3 and pushes Holmgren or Banchero down to you, I mean, you have to be flexible, but at the end of the day, you should not be trading a guy who has all-star potential at number 4. If you think he's going to be that good, then you're crazy. You're a franchise that's had, like, you haven't had an all-star since like 2015. And before that, you had a couple of years of Cousins being an all-star, but you hadn't had an all-star since like 2003 with Peja and Brad Miller. Like, you don't pass on an all-star because you think something might be an issue. You work it out, or you figure it out down the road.
Right. No, I agree with you. And I think that's why.
Can I throw this out there, Casey?
Hey, go ahead.
Because it just might as well just be De'Aaron slander day. Like, at what point? At what point, like, if it doesn't fit, is like, do we got to start looking at De'Aaron Fox? Like, okay, we could make this work with Tyrese. Now we got these concerns with, new draft pick A. At what point do you shift your eyes like, maybe the problem's over here?
That's the toughest question, because I think it's very unfair for Fox.
100%. And I apologize to De'Aaron for that.
Yeah. I mean, it's unfair, but it's a reality, because what you don't do is you get to like 27, 28 and still wondering what's going to happen. That's where you can't get to. So that's why I do understand getting to the playoffs is a major push, because you are just wasting years of these guys' careers. But, De'Aaron's played for, this will be his 4th head coach. his fourth head coach going into his sixth season. That's not good. That's not conducive to, growth. And everyone wants something different out of him. They all want him to push the ball, but they all, like, behind the scenes, they all have different ideas of who and what he can be. And that's how you damage young players. And so, I hope that there's a way that he can find peace and sort of find a lane that's his and stick to it and grow in that. But at the same time, you can't wait forever. You just can't, especially when it comes to, looking at how you're all in with Sabonis and Fox at this point. Most of this team outside of those two are expiring contracts. And you got Davion Mitchell, you got Rashawn Holmes, which I don't think anyone believes will be part of the team. And then outside of that, every other player on this roster is literally an expiring contract.
I really feel like if De'Aaron Fox doesn't work here in Sacramento in the next year or two, I'm not really not trying to stall him out, but I feel it says more about the franchise than it does De'Aaron Fox, right? Because you just look at his first 5 years. This has been a mess. This has been a complete mess. And then I see Monty and maybe even Vivek and Wes Wilcox are coming, and they seem like they're trying to change things, but it's a mess. Like, I understand some people when they say who could flourish in this situation. It's tough. I always think back to Alex Smith. And not saying Alex Smith was, this Hall of Famer.
That's a great example, though.
Yeah, and it's almost the same thing. Fox has been in the league, what'd you say, 5 years now?
Yeah, I think this is going season 6.
That's crazy. That's crazy. 4 head coaches in 5 seasons is nuts. And it's like Alex Smith when he had 7 offensive coordinators in his first 8 years. There is no consistency. There's nothing that you can lean on. There is nothing that you can build on year after year. That's impossible. So, like, if it didn't work in the next year or two, I guess maybe you're hoping Mike Brown would have been here for 2 years, maybe 3 years or whatever. But even then, it's not working. So who knows what happens? I think that's more of an indictment on the Kings franchise, personally.
Oh, I fully agree. I mean, everyone wants to know what's the Kings' identity, and the identity, it's there. Just no one wants to put their finger on it. It's dysfunction. It's chaos. That's what their identity is. There's no question. So, you want to have a defensive identity or a team that runs as your identity. Well, no, the identity is very clear. It's chaos. It's just absolute chaos. And you've got to clean that up. That's got to be, like, priority number one is to, it's one thing to have Sabonis go and represent you at the draft lottery. The next step is to make sure that he knows that he's loved every day, and not by telling him that, but by putting the pieces around him to grow the thing the right way, to make him successful, to make the franchise successful. Get out of your own way, find success, embrace success, stop taking steps back. I mean, all of these things. But, like, people are asking, is this a 4-man draft? Is there a big drop off after 4? And the answer is yes. And that's where, like, this is another point where the Kings can't overthink this. They can trade down and go get another really, really good asset to go with another, 6 through 8 pick or something. They can trade out. They can trade up. If you're going to trade out, you better be getting an all-star or really close to it. It's a top 4 pick in the draft. You're giving up what could be, again, let's just say it as it is, what could be Russell Westbrook or Donovan Mitchell. You don't have a player that good right now. And if he projects as anywhere close to that, then you should really think about just taking him. But also, I think that if you're at this point in the draft and you're worried about something like fit with Jaden Ivey, and you know that the 2 top players in this draft are perfect fits, then extend yourself that way. Go trade to move up, like what we've talked about before. If number 2 is obtainable at all, then go get it. Because that's a guy, if you're talking about Chet Holmgren or you're talking about Jabari Smith, those are guys that can actually change the course of your franchise that fit. So we don't have to worry about does does this work with De'Aaron Fox or not? If you
Right.
can't make it work with one of those guys, then there's only one person we're pointing fingers at.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Absolutely.
They're flawless fits. The number one, Jabari and Chet, like it's day one, no issue. And to be fair, the Jabari idea seems almost non-existent. Not that everybody's got a price for the $1 million man. Like, yeah, I'm sure Orlando would listen, though I don't think they'd be eager. Given the state of the Oklahoma City Thunder, maybe that's a little, maybe they're in a slightly different position to where they'd be willing to listen and move. And you're confident, and I assume in that case it's Chet. Jabari's an easy one. Chet's the two. That Chet is a seamless fit here.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just watching game tape after game tape of him, and there's so many things he does well. You know, I just really, we haven't seen a player like him. And I think that's, one of those things that's a little bit scary, but in like less than 27 minutes a night, he averaged like 3.7 blocks per game. His ability to play in the pick and roll is crazy. His ability to stand his ground and play man on defense against much bigger players, much heavier players. I mean, just block Jalen Duren again and again and again at the college level. That's crazy. His ability to act as a weak side shot blocker and help his teammates out. I mean, that's what you're looking for. If you're this team, you need a guy who can stretch the defense and who can block shots. Averaged, per 36, he was around like 13.2 rebounds per game. Like, this is a guy that not only can he do that, but as soon as he grabs a rebound on the defensive end, he looks to fire an outlet pass. He looks like Kevin Love out there. That's something that the Kings desperately need. If you're going to have De'Aaron Fox running the court, get somebody that can send a ball out to him and actually, like get the offense running, not from grabbing the ball and running with it, but from firing a ball down. It's just, again, something the Kings have missed. He can handle the ball. He can shoot over the top of people. Is there some rough edges? Sure. Like Holmgren has some question marks. The biggest one is that he weighs like 190, 195 pounds. But I mean, he's got a 7'6" wingspan. He can be on his tiptoes and actually wrap his hands around the rim. Like, this is a guy that is crazy long, but again, the next generation of NBA player. You can use him as a trailer and have him shoot the three ball, shot 39% from three. When Sabonis steps off the floor, you can run the offense through him because he's a very good passer. He's shown that he can hit the lob. He's shown that he can play with a big man in Drew Timme at Gonzaga. So, yeah, I really do like what he brings to the table, and I do think he's a perfect fit. Like, if you were going to create a perfect fit type player, you'd wish that he weighed an extra 20 pounds, but it would probably be Chet.
I like Chet because the more I look into him as a player and some of the things that he's gone through, he's been tested everywhere. Like, he's been the biggest guy in every gym that he walks in, and I'm a dunk on this guy, or this guy's so skinny, he's not that good, I'm about to give him that work. It happens every time he steps on the floor since he's probably been about 13, 14 years old. He's not fazed by people coming at him. If anything, he seems to embrace it, and I like that about him. So he gets to the NBA, it's nothing new. People are going to be looking at him like, oh, here's the skinny guy, we're going to show him what it's really like. He's not going to be intimidated by that. He's not going to be fazed by that. If he, and this is what brings a little comfort to me when you talk about drafting Chet Holmgren, if he doesn't work, it's because he's not good enough. Not because he was overwhelmed or he was scared or he was unprepared. Like, if he's not good enough, then that's just what it is. But I think some of the things that people worry about is like, oh, they're going to, come and start dunking on him and take his soul. Like, you can't do that with Chet. Like, I think Chet is battle tested, and I like that about him.
Yeah, he's tough. He's a tough kid. That's the thing that stands out. Like, he projects as, the top defensive player in this draft without any question, but an all-league defender at the power forward position. I mean, that's what you're looking at, a guy who could easily lead the league in blocks. And he has a really, really sharp, like, defensive mindset. He doesn't mind, mixing it up, getting a little dirty. Is he going to get dunked on? Sure he is, but everyone gets dunked on. Rudy Gobert gets dunked on. I mean, Rashawn Holmes dunked on Rudy Gobert a couple of times, so that that's going to be part of it, but you got to give him time to grow into it. And what you can expect out of him is for him to average 25 a game or something. You need to be realistic about who he is as an offensive player. Again, he can shoot the three. He shoots something like 84% at the rim. I mean, it's just like incredible what he does at the rim. But he's not going to get a lot of those opportunities. That's where I think he can get manhandled a little bit is on the offensive end down to the block. But again, like you teach him a fadeaway, you work with him on some of these, on some of his post moves. He can score with either hand. I think he's going to be just fine. You just have to, temper your expectations on who he can be as an offensive player early in his career.
We'll talk more about the upcoming draft and more Kings basketball with our 1320 Kings insider, James Ham, when D'Lo and KC return here on Sacramento's #1 sports station, ESPN 1320. Clear. Synergy has 36 Jaden Ivey games. I think that's what I will be doing this evening.
Yeah, I think I was going to watch a Jaden Ivey game tonight, too.
The A's just gave up 4 in the ninth after leading 3-1 heading into it.
Oh, my God.
They're down 5-3.
Oh, my goodness.
Closer just got manhandled.
That's terrible.
Yeah, like I'm not sure why people are comparing Chet Holmgren to Bol. Like the only thing with Bol, I mean, like if you ever watch Manute play, you should know exactly. Like there is no ball handling at all. There's no like ability to get down and into a stance, and that's something that Chet can do. Chet can get small, so
Chet can go.
Yeah.
Somebody, where is he at? He has hella great. Says, whoa. The hell did Kenny start liking Chet? It was about a week ago. Dove into Chet, and I was like, I gotta like this guy. I do like Chet. I think he can play, man. If you want to look at the concerns, I think all these guys have concerns, and they're valid. But I think Chet can play, man, and I liked his mentality. I liked just his mindset. That brought a little comfort to me for sure.
Yeah. No, I like him too. I think he's he seems like a really good kid that he's going to take time to develop, but so is Jabari Smith Jr. And he looks, I mean, like a clone of Jaren Jackson Jr. But also he got a little LaMarcus Aldridge in him. And I think the problem with Chet is you have a tough time putting a finger on who he's going to be. And, I would like to see what Kevin Garnett weighed as a rookie, because that, like someone said, I'm describing Kevin Garnett, and that's who, like when I'm watching a lot of it, it's kind of that, except for he's not as ferocious. He's not that guy. He is a dude who yells and screams after he, gets a big block or stuff.
He'll let you know about it for sure. He'll let you know. Hey, did you guys see this, that they have the final, there's 7 cities for 5 spots, if I'm reading this right, for the NCAA Women's Final Four, and Sacramento is one of the 7.
For the final itself?
For the Final Four between 2027 to 2031.
Wow.
I mean, I don't know what they draw. Like going to the men's Final Four.
They draw.
But do they draw like that? Because that was 70.
Well, no,
I want to say that was 70,000.
No, it's not that. But
they're all in the arenas.
10,000 at the Golden One Center.
Yeah, they could fill up. I mean, I assume they can fill up the Golden One Center, but do they do more than that?
And no, they don't.
Yeah, the women, they do the arenas.
Yeah, they do arenas.
Yeah. Someone's asking me my thoughts on AJ Griffin. Like, first of all, he's supposed to be a 3-and-D guy, but he doesn't play defense. So there's hope that he develops as a defensive player. But I typically like to start from a point that a guy who's supposed to be 3-and-D should actually be able to play defense. That's number one. And then number two, he plays below the rim. And, I like who he is as a player, but again, he reminds me athleticism wise more of Tyreek Evans without the handles.
Yikes.
So yeah, I mean, again, like there's something there, but I feel more comfortable like 6, 7, 8. I like Matherin better. Matherin has moved up ahead of Sharp on my board too. Yeah.
I like
Yeah.
that one a lot too. There's a lot of guys I like in this draft, man. These kids can play, man. I like a lot of what I see from all these guys, at least projected to go in the lottery for sure.
Yeah.
Johnny G. Oh my God.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Michael Cole.
This
Oh,
is
hang
a,
on. Hang on. Conversation continued there throughout the commercial break. You did say something, James, during that break that I will bring to the air here that kind of caught my attention a little bit and made a note here. You don't seem to be particularly high on. And be clear, this isn't a fourth pick. Like I think there's very little conversation we're having about potential players there at the fourth pick. But someone asked you what you thought about AJ Griffin, and you didn't seem to be particularly high on him.
yeah, I mean, I think he's athletic, but a lot of what he does not translate to the court. So I know that sounds crazy. He's a great shooter, one of the better 3-point shooters in this year's draft, but he doesn't really play defense. He's got the wingspan and the body. I mean, he's totally built, but he just hasn't figured out the dynamics of defense yet, and he's very young. But also that he you can see workout videos of him putting up this tremendous vertical, but he doesn't use it. Like Jaden Ivey uses his vertical.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you watch Jaden Ivey play, you're like, holy cow, I can't believe I just saw that. Like he went up for a rebound and his eyes are at the rim. I mean, that's a kid who knows how to function and how to use his strength and athleticism the right way. Where I just think Griffin is more ground based, and every once in a while he'll get up on a break and hammer a ball down, but he's not a guy who's really going to go into traffic and do stuff. That's where I think really like the Jaylen Brown comparison that we've heard. I watch it and I'm like, okay, I don't buy that at all. Jaylen Brown wasn't a great 3-point shooter in college, and he was just a super athlete that could jump out of the gym, and he's developed his game the right way, but we're looking at a player who's really doesn't even do the same types of things. He is good off the ball. Like I watched him the Final Four. He moves all over the court. He works to get open. He didn't hit anything at the Final Four, but again, that was a big time, 70,000 fans. And you're a young kid. I get it. Sometimes you're going to miss your shots. But yeah, I'm just not a super huge AJ Griffin fan.
Yeah. Okay. One of the guys that you are a fan of, Jaden Ivey, you guys talked about on the podcast, on the Kings Beat podcast, about him moving up into the top 3, possibly, in different mocks and rumors and things of that nature.
I'm watching Jaden Ivey games all night tonight, by the way.
Yeah, it's Jaden Ivey in the office for me over here. You know what I'm saying? That's what I'm watching over here.
Okay, now. Kenny watches 11 minutes of The Office. Now all of a sudden he's a super fan.
Oh no!
Kenny just finished the basketball episode last night. Now, James, mind you, it took him over a month to watch the basketball episode. The single episode by itself, he watched like 13 minutes of it, left it for over a month, and then finished the final 11 minutes last night. Now all of a sudden he's an Office expert.
But I got there. You got to give me time to develop. You know what I'm saying? You can't just expect me to be an all-star.
And you liked it. Like you thought it was funny.
Yeah. I liked all the episodes I've seen of The Office so far. All like 4 or 5 of them.
That's one of those shows that's been binge watched in our house. It's been on loop, and like I've seen every episode probably 15 times. We have like a weird grouping of shows that we do that with that are on at all times. So Psych is on all the time. Veronica Mars, which is a weird one, but the old Veronica Mars series is on all the time. I think my son had in high school like a class that they made him watch it, and so now it just plays on loop at the house.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course The Office. I mean, we watch it all the time.
Yeah, The Office is good.
90 games in the office tonight at the Carol.
I'm locked in. I'm locked in over here, at the crib with Jaden Ivey in the office. But we talked about Ivy, and you talked about him possibly going up into the top 3. Talk to the people a little bit. I mean, are you buying it? Are you buying that he is now, shooting up the draft boards and getting into that range that we thought was impregnable, as Mike Tyson once said, and that's the top 3. Do you think he's in that discussions now?
I think he is. I mean, we're 3 weeks out, right? So you're always watching for the riser, the faller, these guys that like make a late run. And then, some of it, I think a little bit of that stuff is agent play and all that. I think that we've seen Sharp move up high. I think he'll drop back down probably 8, 9. That's just my own opinion. But I think that that's pretty safe. We saw Johnny Davis make a run early, right, and get all the way up. People are talking about him at the top 4 spot. But Ivy, just the way the talk is, the buzz is about him. I mean, I've heard rumor that OKC is interested in him at number 2. That could be some gamesmanship. There's also rumor that Houston could be interested in him at number 2. Just go back to last year's draft, and if you looked at last year's draft from the beginning to where we ended up, I mean, it changed dramatically. I think Evan Mobley could have been the number 1 pick in that draft without any question. Cade Cunningham was like the known guy, and no one's going to pass on him because that could be like passing on Luka. But we heard, that Mobley was going to go number 2 forever. And then Jalen Green sneaks in and goes number 2, and he drops to number 3. And then, Jalen Suggs was supposed to be, it was a top 4 lock. And then all of a sudden he drops and Scotty Barnes moves up. Like, these things happen. And that draft was far better than this draft. Far better. And that's what I'm kind of getting to with this draft. Like, moving down is dangerous in this draft because you better know that the guy that you want is going to be there. So if the Kings want Keegan Murray, moving to 5 is fine. Moving to 6 might be okay. Moving to 7, probably a bad move. You're probably not going to get him. Maybe at 8 you could get him. But like, the strength of this draft is really at the top, and then it gets really, really questionable all the way up and down the board. So there are guys that are going to go in the 20s that are going to be better than guys that go at number, in the top from 6 through 10. No question. There will be guys there that are better.
So if Ivy, and I encourage everybody to check out the latest edition of the Kings Beat podcast, if Ivy does creep into the top 3, whoever that pick that falls out is, that's an automatic selection for Sacramento, right?
Oh, I think so. Yeah, if Banchero or Chet Holmgren fall, I don't believe. I think Jabari Smith is going number 1. That's like a lot of what we're hearing. Jabari Smith's going number 1. So if I write him in pen, and Ivy somehow moves up, then it becomes like a personal choice. If you're at number 3 and you're choosing between Banchero and Chet Holmgren, that's not as easy as number 2. I know that sounds strange, but at number 2, Chet Holmgren makes a lot of sense. At number 3, then you start getting into like, okay, I'm the 3rd pick. I can use a little bit more personal preference. And, you got Alperen Şengün, you've got Christian Wood there. Like, who fits better with who type deal. And I think Paolo might actually fit better. And so there's always an outside shot that Chet Holmgren falls to number 4. He's not falling to number 5 or number 6 or number 8. That's just not going to happen. But him moving to number 4, there's always a possibility. And so the Kings have to be flexible. And they also have to look at this like, if you believe that Chet is a perfect fit long term, then move up. Like, if he's a franchise cornerstone and he's going to be an all-world defender and he can be a game changer for your team specifically, then make the move, even if it's a longer-term deal, where you're waiting 2 years for him to be fully who he might be, and then really more like 4 years before you know exactly who he is. But I think that there's a lot of possibility there for the Kings at number 4. They're in a good spot.
I think they're in a great spot, James. And this is why, with the way this is shaping out and, the ascension of Jaden Ivey on draft boards and just looking at him more and really getting enamored with his talent. I mean, I agree with you. If you believe in Chet at 2 and there's a deal to be made, go ahead and make the deal. Go get Chet, Paolo, whoever. If you can get to 2 and you can make the move, then you make the move. But other than that, Kings can – I kind of feel like, and this may be dangerous to say, I kind of feel like the Kings can't lose at 4. If you just stay there and if people are falling out –
or go wrong when you say things like that.
What could possibly go wrong?
What could go wrong?
Somebody chooses 2 players, and you get the 5th best player. You're like, wait a sec, how did this happen? Or your phone gets jammed and you can't make the pick in time, and you slide down one. It's just like, what was it?
Get their draft pick on time, and you know what the analysis would be? We knew they'd figure out a way to blow it.
Wasn't it Mike Tice that did that with the Minnesota Vikings? Yeah.
Let the time run out. How?
Yeah, let the time run out. Yeah, and it was like top 10 too, right? Top 7.
Yeah. But no, I think they're good at 4, man. I think they are. I really think there's 4 top level guys. I even think the guys behind that. I like Keegan Murray. Obviously, I like Shaden Sharp. I like Mathurin. Like, I think those guys are really good too. They're not going to get picked, but man, they got some ball players, man, for them to be at 4 and to choose from. If they, at worst case scenario, if they just hold tight.
Yeah, and if you're looking at the chatter regarding Ivy at this point, right, and you look around at some of the players who will become available, most of those players aren't good enough to be traded for the 4th pick. Mm-hmm. If you think he's going to be, that player, if you think he's going to be a Westbrook or a star level player, then I'm that it is what it is. I mean, like, if he's that good now, then John Collins isn't that good. We can OG Anunoby isn't that good. Mm-hmm. Like, you can't take those players and move up to number 4 if you think that Jaden Ivey is as good as like what a lot of people think he will be.
Yeah.
It's funny how much these 3 spots have changed the progression of this offseason, because I think we would be having a lot of conversations, whether they be about John Collins or OG Anunoby, or much to the chagrin of James Hammond, virtually everybody else on the planet, Julius Randle. If the pick was 7 or 8, now all of a sudden it's 4, and it feels like a lot of those conversations aren't necessary. Those conversations that we thought the Kings would spend this offseason are initiating are teams that may be trying to initiate conversations with the Sacramento Kings, and why it feels like it's always the other team that hangs up on the Sacramento Kings. The Monty McNair might be in a position of power where he can say, "Oh man, sorry, phone died. I'm out," hit the decline button.
Yeah,
you're breaking out. I can't. I'm gonna hit you right back.
Well, look, I mean, the Kings are going to have to be creative no matter what, because it doesn't matter how much we talk about these top 4 players. None of them are going to be the difference between you winning, going from 30, what do they win, 30 to like 45 wins next season. Not one of them can make that difference in year 1. You're talking about year 2, year 3. Now, we could make the argument that Paolo, Chet, and Jabari, all 3 are better than what the Kings had the power forward position last season, like as rookies. You could make that argument that even as rookies they'll be better. So maybe you can pick up some wins, but realistically, this is just one part of the rebuild of this team, and you can't miss here, but you also have to make smart, savvy moves with what happens after that. And I think that's why moving up is probably the most difficult thing to do, because if you're going to jump to 2, it's going to cost you your 2023 first round pick, and you can top 5 protect it, which is you have to do because next year's draft has like 2 or 3 complete franchise changing players at the top. So that would be one thing that you could do. But so I'm not going to do that. If you need to move your future picks, you can't do that. Especially if you make it a lottery protected 2023 and then maybe a top 10 2024, now you can't trade your first round pick until 2026. So going back and doing another deal that requires a first round pick becomes so much more difficult. So yeah, it's just a little all over the board. You got to think this thing through. It can't. This is chess. It's not checkers. And some teams play 3-dimensional chess. That has not been the case with the Kings. But we'll have to see what exactly they do here with all of the. It's a whole package that you have to do this summer, not just one thing.
Yeah.
And I think the first part of the package is Mike Brown and the kind of institution of like, okay, here's the game plan. Like, here's the book. We're not going to start the season trying to figure things out. We're laying it out here in the preseason. We're laying it out here in training camp, and we're going to establish roles for everybody. Kenny and I were talking about the importance of knowing exactly what you're going to do with Davion Mitchell when the season starts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think having a schematic in place, right? Having even what Jordy Fernandez has already been on staff, so he's out there, sending people out to work with players, and we see that Doug Christie is I think he's in Napa working out with Domantas Sabonis right now. Like, that's huge.
It's a hell of a place to go work out.
Yeah, I think that's where they're at. I believe that's where they're at. I know that he is working out with Sabonis this week. But again, the key is that not only are you working on some things, but you're also starting to introduce some concepts. And that, I think, is good. Already getting the lingo, already getting the game book out there, and sort of what it is that you want, what play sets that you're really going to hone in on, and your defensive identity and all that stuff. That's good. So, I think Mike Brown's fingerprints are going to be all over this thing. But also, like what you said, like having players that know that this is going to be their coach. Like even a guy like Chimezie Metu, who has a non-guaranteed deal, like he's played for Mike Brown. He played for Mike Brown with the Nigerian national team. There's a relationship there. He understands what's going to be expected. He understands the lingo. That might actually make him an easier player to bring back for next season than a guy like maybe Damian Jones, who doesn't have any ties. So at least then you have a coach on the floor, a guy who can actually sit there and say, oh, this is what he's trying to say, to some of his teammates. So yeah, this is interesting. This is, it's going to be a weird summer of change again.
So James, before we get out of here, I want to ask you, we talked about fit, maybe that's the theme and all this other stuff. Say they do go with Jaden Ivey, right? What does that mean for the rest of the roster? Does that mean Terrence Davis is gone? Does that mean Dante isn't re-signed? Because at that point, you're creating whether we like the pick, best player available, and all this other stuff, it doesn't change the fact that you're creating another logjam at that two guard and point guard position. So what does that look like possibly for the roster?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mentioned Damian Jones just as like an example. I forgot Damian Jones did play with for Mike Brown with the Warriors. So yes, Damian Jones would probably know the lingo as well, but I was using him as an example. As far as the rest of the roster, just to be totally blunt and honest, the rest of the roster doesn't really matter. It's going to be about this top end. So when it comes to DiVincenzo, I expect them to be in the ballpark with DiVincenzo, and there's a very good chance he comes back. If Jaden Ivey's the first pick, that doesn't change that. He's an asset. You need to handle him that way. You need to sign him to a contract, and then if you've got to move off of him a year from now, then go ahead. But when it comes to guys like Terrence Davis or Justin Holiday, these guys are all on 1-year deals. So as much as anything else, they're expiring contracts. And I think Terrence Davis can be a guy that sticks around in Sacramento for a while. I really do love his skill set and sort of his energy that he brings and everything else. I think he's a perfect, Bobby Jackson type 6-man that brings all kinds of things to the table. But you got to have the right players around him. And, if you need him to go get a different player, then that's what you do. So I think it's going to be, again, it's not just one move, and there will be a ripple effect somewhat to whoever they take. But I don't think it's that extreme just because most of this roster is on expiring contracts.
I'm going to be all on the Jaden Ivey. I think I'm already on the Jaden Ivey train. It's going to be real. I'm given what I just stumbled upon on Synergy, I could be borderline unbearable tomorrow.
You might go full Shaden Sharp. Kenny on Shaden Sharp.
That's right.
Nobody goes full Shaden Sharp, Kenny. Nobody.
Jaden, I still believe in you, big dog. I still believe in you, man.
I think I'm gonna go Jaden tonight, and then since we got basketball tomorrow, I can go Chet Friday. But I'm gonna focus my attention on those two guys. I want to mention before we go, and this is crazy because I'm almost positive we mentioned his name earlier in the show. Clarence Hill is reporting that Marion Barber is dead. He was found dead in his apartment. The cause of death is unknown. I think we were mentioning Marion Barber's name as we were making fun of Dan Orlovsky for his DeMarco Murray stumble. And of course the chat house ran with it, and it got pretty funny. I loved Marion Barber, man. He was one of my favorite. He was one of my favorite football players, man. That dude was a beast. Like, he had a role for that Dallas Cowboys team, and he executed it to absolute perfection. And it wasn't until they tried to change his role where he started to struggle a little bit, man. But he was one of my favorite dudes to watch. And I'm so, 30, his birthday's in 9 days. Like, I'm sad to see this story, man. He was one of my favorites.
Yeah, that's just terrible, man. Rest in peace, Marion Barber, man. Marion the Barbarian. He was a problem, man.
That boy is bad. Sad to see that story from Clarence Hill that's out there. I hate to end on that note. So I guess we can go back to talking about Jaden Ivey for like 90 seconds. How excited we are about that. I wanted to point that out again, only because we were talking about him earlier. We were talking about Marion Barber, Felix Jones, and all of the different running backs who played with Dak Prescott, I think, according to Dan Orlovsky. Yeah, man, just tough story to read. I feel like we've been reading about football players passing away way too early. Quite a bit over the last couple of weeks, really, since the horrible tragedy with Dwayne Haskins. But rest in peace to MB3 for sure. Kings Beat podcast, great deep dive by James, Sean, and Brendan Nunez into Jaden Ivey and the potential of him moving up into the top 3.